Hello everyone, Dolphin Oracle here again tonight. Been a couple of days since we talked last. Rollout of MX 23.5 with the XFCE 4.20 desktop is out in the wild, and it was a little bit bumpier of a rollout than we were expecting, to be honest with you. XFCE 4.20 had some settings migration issues for some of our users, and it took us a little while to get things sorted out. So anyway, I'm back now with the video that I promised about installing drivers other than what's in our repo, what's in the MX repo, or what's in Debian's repos, or and installing other than whatever the biggest version number is, the latest version number is from the Nvidia Developer Repo. And I mentioned that it was going to take a little bit of command line work to make this happen. So I've done a little bit of the work for us. So I'm going to open up my file manager here, and I have a cheat sheet of notes, and these notes are god-awful big because I have my screen cranked up to a weird resolution so you guys can see them. And naturally I go and hide it. Okay, so number one, we want to make sure that this library, libx nvidia nv control 0, is some low version, preferably the version set from Debian. Now there's a nice command that I provided here that will install whatever Debian's current version is, but you can also do this from Synaptic. Lib, let's see here, xnv control 0, and then you can go up to package and force version. If there's more than one version, the force, there isn't right now because that's the only one I have installed. But you're going to want to make sure of that, because one of the things that when we trick the ddm-mx tool, the MX is NVIDIA installer tool, to installing whatever version we want, that package doesn't get upgraded and downgraded automatically. It's actually a depend of a couple of conky configurations, so it doesn't get removed. It's there. So if you accidentally have it upgraded to some other version, like from backports or say from the NVIDIA Developer Repo, where I think it's 565 something, it'll work for most things, but the NVIDIA driver installs will barf because of that library. So make sure that it's lowered down to something low. Generally, Debian's version is fine. The next thing we need to do is we need to enable the developer repo. Now, the ddm-mx tool will do that for us, or we can do it manually. So this is, if you want to do it manually, you can do a wget, and it will install this deb file, and then you will install the keyring package, and then do an app update, and it will update the repos for various things. So let's just go ahead and do that step. So I'm going to Control-C that. We'll open up my terminal with Control-Alt-T and Control-Shift-V. Yes, paste it in there, and down it comes. And then we're going to dpackage/I, CUDA, and hitting tab for the famous bash autocomplete to give us the package name. Whoops, I forgot to put in sudo. Okay, that's done. Now, that package is important. It has the keyring, so you can use the developer repo, and it actually sets up the repository information already. It's already there. So all we have to do is an apt update, sudo apt update, and now we've got that information in there. And you're going to see it says one package can be updated. Yeah, that's that package I just talked about earlier, libx nv control 0. That package will bark at you to update this if you have this developer repo enabled. It's why I tend not to leave these things enabled all the time. But for the purposes of this video, we're going to pull some tricks here. So the next thing is you want to find out which drivers you want. Now, a lot of folks are telling me the 550 drivers. I think the tool will pull like 565 by default, which might technically be beta. There's some others in there. The nice thing is, once you have the repo enabled, you can look. So, whoops, let's leave that here like that. And we're going to do an app policy. Policy will tell us all the versions of a file in there. And it's always going to be NVIDIA driver is the package. And it gives us all these package versions. All of them. 565, 560, 555, 550 is what we're going to use. That's what a lot of people are talking about that they want to use. So the 550 drivers are what we are going to use. Okay, so we're going to do that, the 550 drivers. So this, we're going to set up an app preferences file specifying the version, and we'll use 550 in our test. So I've already created a template for this, and you can call it Etsy app preferences.d nvidia temp. Now, how do you do all that? Well, the way I do it is I go sudo nano /etsy /app preferences.d nvidia temp, and now it's going to open a blank file because it doesn't exist. Okay. Now I can take this information and I'm going to copy it. Whoops. This is setting up a pin preferences file. So what we're doing here, we're going to take any package that matches these parameters, and we're going to limit them to the version we want, which in this case is 550. Now I put a star on the end, so that's going to look at any 550 version, and app will automatically choose the highest one of that. And we've also have a few NV libraries and CUDA libraries, because when we use the NVIDIA installer tool, the ddm-mx tool to do this, it's going to pull in a couple of libin codes for you CUDA people that like that kind of thing. So I'm going to grab all these files, and there's you notice there's i386 and regular undefined. That is because there are some libraries that get pulled in by the tool that are 32-bit. Mostly, I'm going to guess that's for like games and stuff, but it does happen. It does come in, so we got to get them both. So we're going to Control-C that, come back over to our Nano terminal here, Control-V, yes, paste all that in there. Actually, that was Control-Shift-V because I'm in a terminal. And we're going to Control-X and yes to save and enter. And now we can do our update. Now, the nice thing about this is you don't actually have to do the update. So you can do, because the first thing that the installer is going to do is update the repositories. So we're going to start up the installer. No need for the /n switch, so because we already have the NVIDIA repo enabled. So, but might be a good idea to skip the driver detection, and that's because it's going to tell you there's no driver for your card. So anyway, we're going to start up the tool. You can start it from the menu if you want, but the menu doesn't allow you to specify the driver package. That's what this /f is, -f is. -f will let us choose the package we want. All of them in the NVIDIA Developer Repo are called NVIDIA driver. You're not going to get any Tesla drivers or anything like that. Okay, so this is a little big, but we're doing our usual startup of the NVIDIA driver tool. We're going to say yes to update the sources. And you can see the NVIDIA repos in there. And it does update NVIDIA driver tool. But you know what? Here we go. NVIDIA driver 550.144.03. That's the latest one that it found that's met our parameters from the pin file, the preferences file that we created. Which one do you want to do? The main repos. Now you can say this is the part that's a little confusing because the NVIDIA driver tool is not designed for this. And what's happening is it sees that the CUDA package is installed, so it thinks it's going to pull, it's giving you a choice between the NVIDIA direct repo and the main repo. But if you select the main repo version here, it will actually remove the CUDA library and go back to installing 535, which is the version from the drivers. So we actually want to choose 2 here. Okay? And it's going to give us the command to install everything. Here's the packages that are going to get installed. Continue, yes. And off it goes. Now, the reason I like using the NVIDIA driver tool because it's going to install all the build essential packages and stuff, make sure that crap's installed so that the driver build can go through. It's going to make sure the header packages for the current kernel are installed so that the driver build can go through. Because remember, we're building the module that the kernel is going to use because these aren't open source drivers. They're outside the source tree of the kernel. Right now, I happen to know that this will work on the 6.12 kernel that I have installed because I tried it earlier. Oh yeah, here's the usual. It conflicts. Yes, it conflicts. We'll just reboot later once you have the driver installed. And it's going to go through and build, while it's building everything. It's going to build it for every kernel you have installed. So if you have one that this driver doesn't build on, it's going to fail. So you want to make, and I can't control that. We know the ones in Debian and MX repos will build on any kernel that we offer. I can't say the same for stuff in the NVIDIA driver repo, the NVIDIA Developer Repo. I know the 550 will build on the 612 kernel, which is great. I know the 565 does. I can't say that they'll build on the 6.1 kernels that we have. Just don't know. Your mileage will vary with that because you're outside of our usual repository environment. This is the other reason, though, I like using our driver tool, because it does have the /p switch. So if you need to revert this process, then sudo ddm-mx -p nvidia will purge everything off. This is the nice thing about staying inside packages, because app knows how to do these things. There's nothing wrong with installing drivers outside the package repository, but you gotta know the commands to get them off later if you want. And they're there. There's uninstall and cleanup commands. I don't know what they are. I know apt, so I tend to stick with this. At any rate, driver build is going to take a little bit because I actually have 2 kernels installed, so we'll let that go for a second and keep talking when it's done. Alright, here we go. Driver builds are done. It's getting copied to the various locations it needs to copy to. The kernel driver is getting loaded into the initial RAM drive. That's what's going on here. It's building the initial RAM drives. And then the X drivers are already installed. So then when we do our reboot, we'll be back with our NVIDIA driver installed. And that's all you got to do. And again, we have the information here. If you need to reboot this thing later and purge off the drivers because you found out that they didn't work and you ended up with a console prompt, this is the brilliant part about this tool, is you can go ahead and issue this command to purge them off. Okay. So I believe that the NVIDIA repository stays enabled when you do it this way. It does. It's there. So the next thing we need to do is clean this up so that we don't accidentally update things that we don't want to update. Okay. So we're going to clean up our mess that we made. So we're at this step. After install, remove the app preferences file, uninstall CUDA keyring, and disable the NVIDIA repo. So we are going to do this, and I will have these down in the show notes below. We're going to remove the temp file. Oh, I forgot to use, it doesn't have a comp. That file name's wrong. All right, take the comp off. That file's gone. Then app purge CUDA keyring. Okay, and then update our repositories so that the NVIDIA repo doesn't try to update on top of itself. And there we are. On next boot, you should have NVIDIA drivers available to you, presuming they work with your hardware. Okay, here I am back after a quick reboot, and I just started up my graphics information here to show you what we got to show the stuff's running. And my NVIDIA driver is running. It is doing the X thing with NVIDIA. And right now I've got my 550 drivers installed, is what's being indicated. Now, this is an Optimus laptop, so I used NVIDIA Run MX to get this information because it's not automatic. You got to trigger the secondary graphics card. But anyway, it's triggered. The drivers are installed. It works. Notes below for all the cut and pasting types in the show notes. I want to show you one more quick thing. I couldn't show it earlier because it wasn't installed. There wasn't multiple versions, but if you find yourself having libnvidia control 0 installed and a later version installed already, you can force it here in package. You can force it to a different version if you need to. Okay, just don't do it if you have the NVIDIA drivers installed already, because that can force removal of the NVIDIA drivers. All right. Tips, tricks, how-tos, head over to mxlinux.org or throw up a post at forum.mxlinux.org. This is Dolphin Oracle signing off. Have a great night.